Hello, this is Christina Barn. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this story from the libs of TikTok. And they broke a story about a 90-year-old woman who's a volunteer with the National MS Society, and they are forcing her to step down as a volunteer because of her pronoun usage. And I just kind of think that's a lot asking, for 90-year-olds to get hip with the pronouns, and pretty disrespectful to a woman who's volunteered for 60 years. So we'll be talking about that story. Also, the story I wanted to touch on the other day, but didn't have time. Someone asked Chat GPT some questions about abortion and the most effective argument, and Chat GPT had an interesting response that I want to share with you guys, and we'll be talking about some other things as well. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost to stream and run my website, all that stuff, so you guys can support. I very much do appreciate you guys. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. If you're watching back later, you guys can send super thanks. But again, you guys can just go directly to the website. We do have different merch. You guys can check out the website, like different mugs and different t-shirts and so on. So check out the merch. And I do write as well. And I have mostly fiction books that you guys can check out. I have 2 nonfiction books. I write from like middle grade to like adult, or new adult, I guess, rather. But I have, children's chapter books that are pretty wholesome, that your kids will learn some good lessons, and the children tell me it's epic, so it's very flattering they say that. And then I also have things like my historical fiction fantasy series. It takes place in the Civil War. I think American Civil War meets X-Men. So you guys can search my name on Amazon, but you guys can go to blacktnews.com, and if you go to the merchandise pages or banner, they'll take you to my book website. So thank you all those who are interested in the things I do outside of politics. I do very much appreciate it. I do have a meme today. It's not a meme, but it's a video. My sister, one of my younger sisters, sent this to me not too long ago, and it's a special Valentine's Day message from a very good Trump impersonator, and also they do a good Biden as well. So she thought this was funny, so I went ahead and wanted to share it with you guys.
Wish you a happy Valentine's Day, even if you're a sad, lonely loser with no lover, by the way, because we know you're going to go to CVS and buy chocolate and eat it alone. And you love to do it because you're a little fatso. And sweet baby Cupid is doing a lot of great work. He's a good friend of mine. He's launching arrows. And we're supplying him with the best American arrows money can buy, folks. Look, folks, Cupid's coming to town, man. Baby with a diaper. Folks.
He does a good Joe Biden, and he does a really good Trump too. Let me just go back to his name really quick. His Austin Nasso. That's his handle on TikTok. But yeah, really good Trump, really good Joe for the special Valentine's Day message. I have another video that another sister sent me last night that has nothing to do with politics, but it's in my head now and I want to share it, but I'm going to table that until the very end. So just bear with me and just be in anticipation. I showed my sister, who I live with, last night the video, and she's just confused. And I was like, I had to show you so you would know why I'm randomly going to be singing these things around the house. So anyway, let's hop to it with the story. So libs of TikTok breaking this story. about a woman who is 90 years old, and she volunteered with the National MS Society. That's multiple sclerosis. And they ended up saying that she can no longer be a volunteer because she didn't, I guess, understand the pronouns and whatnot. So here's a snippet of that conversation that they had with Libs of TikTok, and it's we live in a weird world. So I'll go, after I rewatch this video, I'll share the letter that they sent. But
confused. I didn't know what it was, what it meant. And I'd seen it on a couple of letters that had come in after the person's name. They had the pronouns, but I didn't know what that meant. And so finally, when I was talking to her, I thought I'll ask, what does it mean? And let her tell me. And so she said it meant that they were all inclusive, which didn't make sense to me because it sounds like you're
By
uh,
labeling or
labeling for females and not males if you're just putting in she, her.
she said that she was just asking her what it meant to have a conversation. So as a 90-year-old who didn't know what it meant, she's not street savvy to find out what it meant.
Yeah.
And when she said that they were required to use it to be inclusive, and my mom was saying that we've always been the MS Society as a whole and the Long Beach group has just always been inclusive.
A few days later, it was on a Friday at, was it 4:58?
At 4:58, which we thought was odd, but anyway.
At the end of the day, end of the week, I got an email from her saying that they were sorry, but they had to ask me to step down as a volunteer for the MS Society.
And the reason being is that you're not inclusive enough.
The verbiage she said was that she didn't abide by their diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they have to ask her to step down, and she's can't be a part of the MS Society as a volunteer, which to me is ironic because they're saying they're being inclusive, but yet they're excluding a 90-year-old disabled woman who volunteers for over 60 years, and literally the sole purpose is to help the MS patients and find a cure. And
that's what we're there for.
Keep helping with volunteering as much as she can, which has literally been her whole life. That's literally all she does. So yeah.
This sitting here, I'm getting emotional about this. Didn't expect really to, but my aunt had who passed away a few years ago had MS, and this grandmother, oh gosh, now I have the sting of my mascara burning my eye. She clearly did not know what the heck they meant. So them getting upset with her because she didn't understand their pronouns or what it even meant. Because when you respond with want someone explain what do you mean with the pronouns, and you say, well, it's being inclusive, they're just like, well, she, her, okay, well, that's female, that's not male, he, him, that's not dudes, just saying. So she totally doesn't understand the concept of the gender identity and that the pronouns are feeding into the gender identity so people could cisgender and or transgender or gender fluid and all that's what it's supposed to signify. Totally clueless. And people, who are so chronically online, or I don't know, they don't understand that people operate in the real world and just don't come across this weird stuff. They're just trying to do good things, live their life, volunteer, go to sports games, watch TV, etc., and not be wrapped up in your ego trip, because that's what it's really about. I mean, when you have a conversation with someone, you don't announce like, oh, my pronoun is she, her. That's just you wanting them to know, feeling that they need to know. And if they can't, you could tell them your name and just have a conversation based on, your name or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying there's not instances where, if you have to write something down and using their pronouns that they desire wouldn't be appropriate to know that stuff or adhere to that. But she was clearly unaware of what was going on and what was being asked of her. And when they said, "Well, we're inclusive," she's confused because she's like, "Well, we've always been inclusive. What does that mean? What does that mean?" And then to turn around and get rid of her because she's confused or confused her. I mean, there. I guess there could always be more to the story that they're not saying. Um, but we'll just have to at this point take a word for it. Even if she didn't want to use it, the thing about diversity and stuff and inclusion is that if you don't abide by how they want you to abide the different rules that they set, then they want to kick you out. It's, we love Black people. We want Black people to be hired here. We want to see more Black people in government. We want to see more Black people on the Supreme Court, etc. Blah, blah. Oh, what? You're a conservative. You think what? You believe what? Oh, we not your kind. We didn't mean it like that. So people respect diversity and people, and they want to be inclusive in all this stuff, except when it comes to different ideologies. The thing that bothers me when I see coexist bumper stickers is that I know it's a lie. I know it's a lie. If we could just coexist and be like, okay, you're doing your thing. Okay, I'm going to do my thing. I'm not always going to agree with you or do what you want me to do, but we can tolerate each other. Like coexisting is just being tolerant of each other. And that means I can disagree with you and maybe I'm not going to bake the kind of cake that you want me to bake. And maybe I'm not going to use your pronouns. Hey, you don't like my religion or, fair enough. But let's just, we work together. We're going to be cordial and respectful and professional. And we're going to go home and live our lives. All right. That's coexistence. Being upset and being like, nah, the 90-year-old who's been volunteering for 60 years, we can no longer allow her to have volunteer status when her husband had MS. So she has a personal connection to it and has apparently been volunteering longer than the person who kicked her out has been alive. That's messed up. That's messed up. And my my family's not no way would um my aunt who passed away or my grandmother who took care of her would have understood a single thing about this pronoun weirdness. They would think that and they're Christian women or Christian women. Believe them, they're in a better place now, but they're the kind of people who I guess the MS society would probably find to be quite bigoted. So yeah, just it didn't really like hit me until I was really watching that interview with you guys. I'm just like, this is really, really, I know it's messed up. This is super messed up, but let me read the letter that they had. So they showed it a little bit and talked about it a little bit, but let me read it. I can share it on the screen. I don't know how well you guys will be able to read it, but at least you'll know I'm squinting over here as I stare at this. I'll just take my face off so I'm not squinting. Dear Fran, I hope this email finds you well. We appreciate your dedication and contribution to the self-help group leader with our organization. As we discussed earlier during our phone conversation, after a thorough review of our guidelines and standards, it has come to our attention that there has been a failure to abide by our diversity, equity, and inclusion guidelines during your time as a volunteer. Unfortunately, based on the situation, we have made the difficult decision to have you step down from your volunteer position effective immediately. And they sent that at 4:56. While your role, although the Lakewood Long Beach self-help group will no longer formally be formally affiliated with our organization, we want to emphasize that this does not mean the end of your group's activities. You are still more than welcome to continue meeting independently from the society. While your role as a volunteer is coming to an end, we want to emphasize that you and the group are still welcome to attend and participate in the society's events and programs. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. We appreciate the time and effort you dedicated to our organization, and we sincerely hope that you understand the uh, necessary the necessity of this decision. We wish you the best in your future endeavors and hope to see you at Walk MS. Thank you for understanding. Sincerely, Kaylee Kimore. So, I when Gavin Newsom was debating um Ron DeSantis on Fox News, and it was a good debate. It was great TV, especially when DeSantis pulled out that poop map. You just put him on blast, for sure. But they got into a conversation about gender surgery and all those sorts of things, and transitioning and pronouns and etc. And well, not really pronouns, but the gender stuff and mutilation. And Gavin Newsom just tried to downplay it so much, and he's just like, they just want to live. Like, he didn't really debunk anything that Ron said. He's just like, they just want to live. I'm like, what kind of response is that? I just like, when he said it, I like literally laughed out loud because it was so ridiculous. But he tries to pretend like it doesn't really impact a lot of people. Like, they'll eventually say things like, it's such a small percentage of the population. Why are they picking on this group of people so much? And if it were like an obscure thing with just a small percentage of the population, and and it wasn't something that was mainstream, that that's being pushed, people would still continuously be like this grandmother and like, I don't know what the heck all this is. But unfortunately, people have pumped so much attention and time and legislation into this small percentage, and it's a cudgel to beat the rest of us with into submission. It's about, I think, trying to get people to denounce what is real and what is true. I guess I haven't gone down this rabbit hole in a while, but I've certainly mentioned a lot. But if you can deny, if you can't even define, after we've known all this time, what a man and a woman is, if you can't even say that sex is binary, if if you say, just saying that like Dylan Mulvaney is a man and etc., and you think that's so hateful and need to be canceled and bullied over that, um I think it can really kind of show as a society who are the sheep, that who's going to be just like, herded into compliance, they can manipulate and brainwash to the point where you can have them defy reality right in front of you. Like, it might be right in front of their eyes, and they'll still be like, I don't care if that dude has a beard. And you can see his stuff in his tidy whities. That's a woman if he says he's a chick. If you can convince people to act that way, um you have a lot of power. And even if people know that's not the case, if they're willing to say it, you still have a lot of power. So much power. But the people who are not willing to comply, and then you can see that you can destroy them, you've demonstrated that you have a lot of power. But if you're willing to stand up against the madness, regardless of how many slings and arrows they throw at you, you show that you're a threat to the system with the power. It's you guys remember Captain America Winter Soldier, and the Hydra. This is back when Marvel made good movies. um So they had a system, an algorithm that would look up people that were a present threat, but also people who could possibly be threats in the future of people who would stand up against Hydra. So they're gonna put their system online. This is when Hydra had taken over Shield. I'm sorry if I big spoiler alert. It's been out for years. That was what, phase 2, whatever. 3, I don't remember what phase it was. I guess it maybe had to be 2. If it probably wasn't 1, it was probably 2. So it happened a long time ago. You got to know the plot, and I'm sorry if I just ruined it. But Hydra was within Shield, and they were about to just go online with their helicarriers, put in this code, and just start murking people all over the world who was potentially a threat to them. And if you're the type of person who would be like, yeah, I'm going to use their pronouns, I'm going to totally go along with it, I'm going to call myself cisgender, don't worry, I don't think Hydra's guns are coming for you. I don't. I don't. I think you are a useful idiot. As the former KGB operatives would say. And the people who use, particularly I think the LGBT stuff, because it is such a small population. Like if all the LGBT people got together and was like, we're going to be this voting block, would they? I mean, they're going to particularly vote Democrat anyway, I suppose, most of the time. But would they really move the needle? It's not. It's not a large group that warrants so much pandering to. Not to the hard way that they're going. But I think the reason why they invest so much political capital into it is because it's a good way to suppress a lot of other people's rights in other kind of regards. It's a good way to directly come at the religious right, for example, to silence them into legislatively silence them, legislatively stop them. You had cases like the Colorado baker, who was harassed multiple times, and other cases like that. You have, um, for him, he didn't want to make a cake for a wedding, a gay wedding and stuff. So he ended up winning his case like narrowly at the Supreme Court, and then he got like sued again. And there's only so many times some people can sue and afford to fight, these things. So some people are just like, I'll just comply. We should all just comply. Like go through all that trouble. Like we should just comply. It's part of it is about breaking people's will, but of course they do want some kind of legislative victory on their side. And we have a conservative court. Like there was the ruling with another Colorado case. What was the case called? We talked about a lot at the time, and I can't remember the case, but it was a website designer, and she like preemptively kind of had her lawsuit. And people were like, she didn't have cause, like, oh yes she did. Where they already, Colorado already pretty much proved that they would come at people in the event that they didn't want to service like a gay wedding or something. So the Supreme Court ruled basically like it's not even just a freedom of religion issue. Like you cannot like force them to violate their First Amendment rights. Like you can't make a Christian bake a gay cake. And by the way, you can't make a gay baker bake a conversion therapy camp cake either. Like it goes both ways. So if we didn't have a conservative majority, you could probably see things going very badly in the other sort of way. So that's why I think they push this particular demographic so tough, so hard, and push the hate speech laws and want to control what you think and what you say, and want to silence the religious right and so on. Um, because they're in a lot of opposition to their grandiose sort of plans. So if you could control what people think and what they say, and even if they think something else or they're not willing to speak the truth, they're kind of irrelevant, you know? So that's a lot of power that people are wielding. So for this organization to want to, um, I don't know, break the kneecaps of the grandma, like metaphorically, whatever, what, just kicking her off for not wanting to be a volunteer over pronouns, over pronouns. Like it's not like she, was given the finger to a bunch of trans kids and said, told them to go do something to themselves. Like it's not like that. It's just the pronouns really. So again, someone who volunteered for 60 years, and it's a good cause. It should really just be about helping people with this de- debilitating um illness condition. And I just can't imagine writing that email to feel so self-righteous over these pronouns. But again, it's not just a small thing when this has permeated into so many businesses and our culture and our entertainment and so on. It's about really warping society. So I don't want to hear stories like this. But there are certainly stories like it. There are certainly stories like it. It'll continue. When Gina Carano really we know that, by the way, she is Elon Musk is helping her sue Disney. Not even for like a lot of money. I wonder if they'll just, I assume they'll try to get it dismissed, but they could just, want to settle it or whatever, because she's not like she's asking for the moon. But she is suing them for her termination on the Mandalorian show. And they just not only terminated her, they for her posts or whatever, but they flat out libeled her with what they said, claim that she was saying disrespectful things about the Jews and stuff like that, which just wasn't true. So I don't know who in the they did not clear that with PR, I'm sure. I mean HR, before putting that out there. That was some angry intern who was like, I'm about to end this woman's career. And you know, it was messed up. But before that escalation, she basically didn't have contact with Disney. It was probably going to be let go or fired, I would assume, because when you don't have like contact with your employers for some time, I assume that things are not good. But she, when people were pressuring her to try to put like pronouns up, she wrote beep bop boop, made like just Star Wars noises. And I don't know how much she like meant that negatively toward, well, she claimed she didn't really mean anything negative toward the LGBT community, but she wanted to show she wouldn't be bullied and she didn't appreciate being bullied. So she made some Star Wars noises and people just thought that was the worst thing. So Disney had their representatives, within the LGBT community come and, or their particular PR people regarding that, to try to talk to her to whip up some kind of apology. And she was like, okay, I want to say my piece or whatever, but I don't want to be inauthentic about what I say. And they wanted her to basically get on the Zoom call with like 40 LGBT people, whatever, basically have a struggle session, which she thought it was probably going to be a setup. But she's like, how about I just take a couple people out to dinner and we have a conversation? And they didn't like how she wanted to go about it. So basically, when she wouldn't act as how they wanted her to act, that was pretty much, from my understanding, when she had her interview with Ben Shapiro a couple of years ago. That was basically, I think, the end of their communication. And she didn't basically hear from Disney until Lucasfilm was like, by the way, you're fired and you apparently hate Jews. And and you know not a great plan. But Disney was so trashy for that. But when she was telling that story and stuff to Ben Shapiro, I'm just like, I wonder how many special people they have to make sure that if they do content that it's going to I don't know, alert or alarm the I don't know, religious people like the Christians or something. There's these special like LGBT activists and other stuff within Disney to advocate for their group, but how much care and concern do they have toward, like, I don't know, the type of people who help to build their brand all these years. So it was wild what happened to Gina. It was wild what happened to Gina. Anyway, let's move on. Um this world is crazy. This world is utterly, utterly crazy. So I want to talk about this chat GPT um conversation. So this pro-life activist and speaker, Katie Sommers, she's apparently from Toronto. She decided to ask chat GPT what the best argument against she asked what the best argument against abortion is. And chat GPT said the best argument against abortion typically revolves around the belief that human life begins at conception, and therefore terminating a pregnancy is equivalent to ending a human life. This perspective often stems from religious or moral convictions that prioritize the sanctity of life from the moment of conception. So I acknowledge there that chat GPT is right about, that is a good argument. That's one that most people say, that life, human development begins at conception. Life at conception, terminating that life, it is killing a human being, ending a human life. That's pretty much what pro-life people say, right? Adding this bit about that the perspective often stems from religious or moral convictions that, you know, prioritize the sanctity of life from the moment of conception. You could say that, but obviously there are people who are not religious who make that case. And it's amazing how many like lives I'll get on or listen to, and they'll be talking about abortion, and there's different people who run them who are not Christian, that there'll be atheists, and there'll be pagans and all sorts of people I'll get on with who are also pro-life, or they'll run their own lives or see their videos, and sooner or later someone will bring up religion. Even if Christians are on, someone will bring up religion, like, oh, you guys just feel this way because of religion, etc., blah blah blah. And no, I mean, yes, to be fair, yes. But also not necessarily. Obviously the people who aren't religious don't feel that way, that their ideas about it are rooted in religion. Um but I guess you could say that we do prioritize the sanctity of life from the moment of conception, because why would you pick another point, I guess, is the question. A lot of other points that really make a lot of sense, because a lot of different metrics that people use, you wouldn't apply the same standard in any scenario like outside of the womb. um for example, I think this was last week, I was on a live and someone was trying to make the case. And he said this was his first time going on live and debating this. And he was so confident, in my opinion, unearned arrogance. But he kept saying, he's like, I believe that the human body, you have full rights of your body. This was a dude. And therefore, you have the rights to your nutrients, etc., blah, blah, blah. Therefore, a woman can have an abortion. And I was like, okay, I'd like to take this. And they're like, okay. Because it was like, I don't know, like 6, 8 people on or whatever. So I was like, okay, the woman, she, even if she wants to say you can't have direct, you can't use my resources or whatever, nothing happens. If that's something that she can't will to happen. In order to actually have the abortion, she'd have to take a deliberate action with malice, I suppose. She knows the baby's going to die, to kill the baby. So I said, so since she has to take this action, why should we as a society allow her to do this? You have to make the case of why she should be allowed to deliberately kill the child. Like, you have to make that burden is like on you to prove that. Like, why should she be able to do that? And then he just like wouldn't explain why. He's just like, you're just saying, yeah, that this is naturally happening, but you're not saying anything. I'm like, no, you have to explain. Like, you want to take this action. We know it's killing someone. Why should you be allowed to do? Like, basically, my argument is, oh, you don't want to be pregnant? Sucks to be you. Wait 9 months. You'll get your wish of not being pregnant. But as far as, and I mentioned like the government, because to them, they're saying that the government would be forcing them to be pregnant if they don't allow them to have the abortion. No, they're not. They got nothing to do with it if you're pregnant. So they're just saying, let life happen. Don't end it. Like, if we don't do anything, the baby's just going to be born anyway. Like, this is all naturally occurring. So if you want to actually take an action to cause violence, do harm, you need to explain why we should facilitate that and allow that to happen. But he just would not explain it and go deeper than that. So someone else, and he's just like, no one can refute my argument. No one can refute my argument. So he just kept saying that. I'm like, you never really explained your argument. And so then we got deeper in the conversation and about bodily rights and stuff. And so he did believe that in some form of parental obligation, like if you were in a scenario where you have to, let's say you're trapped at a cabin and you have to breastfeed your child, and because no one else can take care of it, and you have to just breastfeed them or whatever, like, do you have an obligation to take care of that child? And the answer would be yes. Or even if you want to pass over the child to someone else for parental responsibility, you still have to take care of that child until the guardianship sort of passes along. So he believed in that. So they're like, okay, so you don't believe in extreme property rights, that you can't use your body at all to ever be forced to save someone or provide for someone, because you believe that they are obligated in some sense. He's like, well, that's not the same. And they're like, well, you have to, your breast milk is a bodily resource. Or what about the energy that you expend with your body? Like, is that not, are we not using our body when we do actions, when we do any sort of labor? And so his argument pretty much got thrashed, but he just kind of wouldn't accept that, but that he had an inconsistency there. And he's just like, well, it's different, basically, because they're in the mother's body. And so we're like, okay, so this is a location thing. It's not about sole rights to the property superseding everything. It's about the fact that you can say this because the baby's in the mother's body. So I hope I explained that well enough. So he never like relented or whatever. But anyway, I explained that story to say people have different reasons that they'll say, but they don't apply it across the board consistently. Usually it's about, it's in the mother's body, therefore we can basically warp our logic and stuff for this special circumstance. And I do believe there are special circumstances regarding parenthood and stuff and pregnancy and stuff, but in regards to parental obligation and taking care of the child, like you're asking for a real special privilege here, to be able to end someone else's life when we know our government exists to secure our rights, our inalienable rights. So I think they're violating their oath every time they don't actually prevent an abortion. But anyway, back to Chat GPT. So the Chat GPT acknowledges like one of the best arguments is life starts at conception, but they say that's, about moral convictions and, a religious perspective, etc. So Katie asked Chat GPT here, okay, when does human life begin according to science? Just they brought up religion. They said, according to science, human life begins at conception, which is the moment when a sperm fertilizes an egg, forming a unique genetic blueprint for a new individual. From a biological standpoint, this marks the beginning of a new human organism's development. so, so here, Chat GPT acknowledges that the best argument is that, the or typically the best arguments is, well, life starts at conception, and there's people with different moral convictions and so on. And then they answer the question of, oh, but yeah, science agrees that these people with these convictions are correct. So I it's no secret I'm a religious person. I'm a Christian because I believe Christianity is true. And there are things, not every Christian or I can explain. Sure. Some things you take some at faith, absolutely. But you still believe in the trust, even in the absence of knowing everything, that there's a truth behind your ideology. So this idea that we should value human life at conception, and fight for the rights of human beings at conception, and that you argue that your human rights begin when your human development begins. It it's it wouldn't make sense if it didn't align with the scientific view, right? If we really weren't humans, like people bring up, well, what about a sperm and an egg? Okay, well, I am not my mother's eggs. I am me. I didn't exist until that egg was fertilized. And that little sperm stuff, they don't exist anymore. I exist. I'm here. But my individual human development didn't begin until that moment. I wasn't two separate beings that did the fusion dance and became Christina. And that's and I guess that would even make, maybe that's the wrong kind of analogy, because Goku and Vegeta were two different entities. No, they were, because they're still two separate living persons. Anyway, anyway, not gonna go down the anime rabbit hole right now, but I didn't begin until that egg was fertilized. So, and one time I was talking to a philosophy bro, as they're called, I guess, about this topic, and we didn't get to finish our conversation because the panel thought it was basically boring, which I think the philosophy bro conversations are pretty boring too. But he's like, well, if you value, it's that's I said the most consistent standard is to value that life at conception, and all the other places you would value is arbitrary. And he was like, well, conception is arbitrary. I'm like, how is that arbitrary? He's like, well, what about the sperm and an egg? And I'm like, so I had to have this whole conversation with him. And he seems like a smart enough kid to know better. So I don't know how much was just kind of pulling people's legs for the sake of an argument. Like, obviously I wasn't a sperm. Obviously I wasn't an egg. And I had to explain, like, I was never a sperm. But it kind of didn't seem like he wanted to accept that. And even he wanted to argue that, if we would value a fertilized, egg, if the human being at fertilization, or an embryo, whatever, I guess, then you should value the sperm. And like, they're not the same, though. We're talking about a distinct human being versus, like, your sperm is never going to evolve by itself into a separate human being. And he even brought up, like, skin cells. He's like, why should I value, like, a single cell sort of thing? I don't value skin cells. And I'm like, but my mom's skin cells aren't me. That's part of her. That's a part of her organism. It's not me. And I was like, And I do value my skin cells. I'm like, do you not value your skin? And what's funny is that, or ironic and kind of horrifying, is that same night, um, well, earlier that day, my skin had reacted to, um, I don't know, my makeup or something, and I started my show late that day, and so my sister was like, "Well, I have this stuff, you can use it for your face, and you should probably do deep clean because you wear your makeup and stuff every day." Um, and so I did end up doing it till pretty late because I was on that live for a while. I got distracted when I was gonna do my regimen or whatever. Long story short, my face did not like it. And I like burned my face. And that's why I like took a week off, by the way, for those of you who don't know. And I was like, I need some me time. Cause I like destroyed, I guess, the surface. I damaged the surface area of my skin. And so I went to bed with my face hurting. It was like really, really intense sunburn. And when I woke up, my face was in a lot of pain too. And so I got some CeraVe stuff to put on my face to that said would heal the surface of my skin. So it I guess it worked well and I healed, fairly quickly. But I just didn't want to put anything on my face. And I was like, let me just take some time and reflect and treat my body better. Cause and I was like, I probably, when I was reading like different ways that you can like damage your skin, I was looking at a YouTube video about it. And I'm like, how did this even like happen? How did I get here? And so they're going through the list of things. I'm like, nope, it's not that. It's not that. Hope it's not that. And then it was like, not properly removing your makeup. I'm like, darn it. I'm like, that is probably it. So I was like, my sister felt really bad for suggesting using that stuff, and she's like, I wish you would have woke me up, and it did burn when I put it on, but I thought maybe it was supposed to be a good burn or whatever, but it as it progressed was not a good burn. So yeah. Anyway, I told my oldest sister about it. She's like, your skin's always been kind of sensitive when you were a little kid. I was like, well, I don't remember. So anyway, I brought that up to say, yeah, I valued my skin, but I definitely valued my skin after that. So people will throw out this stuff like it doesn't matter when that's just not the reality of anything. Like we value these things that make up the whole of us. Like I was on a live talking to, it was mostly like pro-life people, and I mentioned something like, we do value eggs, we do value sperm, and some of the pro-life people were like, what are you talking about? Like, speak for yourself. I'm like, no. If I went to the doctor and they said all your eggs are gone, I would be devastated. I'm like, maybe some women and men don't care about not having kids, but we as a society value fertility. Maybe it's not as much as we used to, but many people do. People will go buy eggs and sperm. Like we do value those things to the same regard as like an individual human life. No, but to pretend like these things have no value is silly. It's silly. It's just not our reality. If you're married and you're trying to have a baby and you go to the doctor and they're like, say something's wrong with your husband's sperm, or you don't, your eggs are dry, or that's devastating news. uh on the episode of Frasier, for any Frasier fans out there, when Daphne and Niles were trying to have a baby, they found out that Niles had slow swimmers, and so they were trying to deal with that because they didn't want to have a baby. And so they were going to try to do different things to keep the intimacy up to try to have the baby. And at the end of the episode, she had a pregnancy test or whatever. She thought that it was negative or whatever. He's like, no, this is actually positive. And so they were trying to have a baby, didn't realize that she was already pregnant. And he was like, but my slow sperm. And she's like, I must have fast eggs. And it was really funny. But if you're not a Frasier fan, well, if you haven't watched Frasier, I loved Frasier. The new show is pretty good too, by the way. Not as good as the original, but there's it's a good continuation of it. Um, but yeah, we totally value these things. So people trying to suppress the truth about um human life, and it just doesn't make any sense. You are suppressing the truth. You are suppressing the truth. And most people, if which I asked this recently on a live to some pro-choice dudes who are on the panel about, okay, there's a situation where a woman found out she's pregnant and her boyfriend didn't like it, and he actually tricked her because his dad was like a doctor or something to take these drugs, and it made her have an abortion. It made her miscarry the baby died, and she was in the first trimester, so she found out like at 6 weeks or whatever, so it was fairly close to that. So a lot of people think you should be able to have an abortion the first trimester, willy-nilly. And so I will ask people, like, do you think that if fathers just started murking their kids, like slipping abortion pills to their partners, that they shouldn't be charged with murder? Do you believe that's murder? And some people will be like, no, I don't think that's murder or whatever. And then I'll really continue to press them and stuff. And they eventually were like, oh, well, because someone else in the chat was told a story about someone who only got like 90 days or something, and they're like, oh no, that's not right. And they did think that they should get longer time. I'm like, okay, well, you do think that's something that they should be punished for taking that life. And pro-choice women will still be like, well, no, if someone did that and I wanted that baby, that's wrong, and that should not be something that people should be able to do. And granted, they'll say like, oh, well, you shouldn't be able to do that because that would hurt the woman. And you're making her digest something that, without her consent. Okay, but that's a different crime than deliberately wanting to kill someone in premeditated murder. So if you wanted to, I would want someone to be charged with premeditated murder if they murked my baby. I would want them to get, I think the average time that people go to jail for murder is like two decades. Some people could get, longer than that. People get the death penalty, depends, but I think the average is like 2 decades in the US. So if someone murked my baby, I'd want them to be charged with murder. And the difference people will say is, oh, well, it's different when women want the baby and their choice is taken away. So it's not that so at that point, if someone says that, it's not about the baby having the right to life, I guess. And I said this in a conversation recently. I'm like, okay, so it's not about the baby having the right to life. It's just the rights in relation to the woman. So I'm like, are they more like property? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess. I'm like, so you think that the human beings were property? I was property in my mother's womb, right? And they're just like, where are you going with this? They're like, I'm like, you think they're property? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, just, I think it's a bold thing to say. You think human beings are property? I'm like, that's really bold to say in Black History Month. And they're like, oh, I knew that's where you were going. I knew that's where you're going. And the host of the live was just like, nope, thank you for saying it. Thank you for saying it. Because that's how we treat the unborn. It's not that they don't have any value or any moral value. You just want to pick and choose when they have it. So, to the chat GPT and all these people out there, people do have moral convictions, whether they're pro-life or pro-choice. People try to pretend like it's just pro-life people who have some kind of moral status or whatever. Most people do believe in when it's a life, then you don't kill it. Most people feel that way. It's just that there's an argument about when that life is. But chat GPT knows that it's at conception, right? Chat GPT knows. Our embryology textbook knows. Biologists know. We all know. But people just want to suppress the truth or say, well, philosophically, it's not a life. Well, that is your belief, man. We're debating our beliefs, but the objective reality is that it is a human being that is alive. Just technically. And we've convinced ourselves that that is irrelevant. Because those are your moral convictions for whatever reason. So you have a belief, I have a belief, but my belief coincides with reality. And if my beliefs didn't coincide with reality, or if I didn't believe that it coincided with reality, then it probably wouldn't be my beliefs, because my beliefs is in seeking truth. So I'm not the one who has to suppress it. I'm not the one who has to suppress it for my worldview. So I just thought that was interesting from Chat GPT. Um, Briefly want to say that Mayorkas apparently was impeached. Uh, Interesting political theater though. Uh, my opinion. I heard Ben talking about this before it came on. Ben Shapiro, and he kind of feels like politically Democrats decided to impeach Trump with no high crimes and misdemeanors. And if you read Trump's impeachment stuff, there's nothing in there about high crimes and misdemeanors and stuff. So if they want to impeach for political reasons, then we have to be, committed to mutually assured destruction, and hopefully people will snap out of it, because you just cannot live in a country where one side is willing to do things to another side and the other side just doesn't do anything else. So I get that. I understand it. The Senate's not going to convict him of the impeachment. So my thing is, if you believe that Mayorkas, and I've already said this before, if he's worth if what he's doing on the border and not taking action is worthy of him being impeached, I don't see how you can't make the case that Joe Biden should be impeached rather than Mayorkas. Because the White House is not getting up every day saying Mayorkas is refusing to do his duty to secure the border, etc. Blah blah blah. He's serving at the pleasure of the president, and he is serving, I'm sure, as the White House wants him to. They are not misaligned. They are not out of step with each other. So if Mayorkas if how he is conducting the border and not choosing to properly enforce the laws there is something that's worthy of impeachment, I think that doesn't really speak so much to him. I think that speaks to the president, again, because they don't seem to be upset with how he's conducting his job. So if he's failing in his duties, it's because that is the agenda of Biden for him to not do them. So it'd be different if Biden administration was like, "Oh, you are not doing a good job," and then he probably just demand that he resigns or something like that. But um, they're aligned in their agenda. So if you really think you can get rid of Mayorkas, who will just be replaced, but he's not going to be impeached, um, or convicted in the Senate. But even if he were, they would just replace him with someone worse, probably, and they would still just abide by Biden's agenda. So it's still going to be the same problem. So this is political theater, absolutely. Is that good for the country? Um, if the plot for mutual destruction works out, I guess, in the perspective of Ben, like, we need to have mutual destruction on the table to make people act right. Because if people just see that you can um roll over and be taken advantage of, they'll just keep doing it. Um, but I suppose you could say he's an easier fish to fry than Biden. But in my opinion, on top of all the other things, they could just simply go the distance. um Whew, interesting comment. I was off this topic, but let me reply to this. I just think it's wrong for anyone to assume what a person having abortion feels. It's an agonizing decision for most people. Um, maybe for most people, there's some people who like immediately know that they're going to have one and preemptively plan and say things like, if I ever get pregnant, I'm going to have one, and they go ahead and they do that. Um, regardless how anyone feels about it, it's still wrong. It's still child murder, and they shouldn't be allowed to do it. And feeling bad about it doesn't make it okay. It just kind of alerts us all that to some level, you know, what you're doing isn't right. So, um, how people feel about it, like some people will say, like, oh, we shouldn't have abortions because women will regret them, etc. And women do many do come to regret, and have different psychological things that they deal with. I know women who've had abortions, um, who regret taking a life. They acknowledge that they took a life, and it had to deal with a lot of different psychological issues after the abortion and so on. There's plenty of women who I've talked to who've had abortion claim that they um didn't have any regrets. And I've never had a conversation with a woman that I believe them when they said that. Uh, they, they never sounded convincing at all. Um, but even arguing that we should end this because women will regret it, etc. That's not the root of the argument. The root of the argument is that it's a human life. Abortion ends a human life. They had a right to life. They should be protected, and um, women shouldn't have this right to end the life of their children. They shouldn't have this special privilege to do that. That's the argument. So, regardless of how people feel, if I felt bad about robbing a bank, it wouldn't be good that I did that. Regardless, it wouldn't be okay for me to keep the money. It wouldn't be okay for who I, terrorized while I stuck up the place, or if anyone got killed in the crossfire. It wouldn't have mattered if I needed the money. If I was, using it for a good cause with my family or whatever situation. You can empathize for whatever reasons I have to do the crime. You can totally empathize and understand where I'm coming from. Um, but that it doesn't make it okay just because people feel bad. It doesn't make it okay just because people feel bad. There was that basketball player recently. It came out that because he had announced, or his girlfriend had announced that she was having his baby, and so his ex girlfriend revealed that she was pregnant some time ago, and he paid her $100,000, I think it was, to have an abortion. And so she released like their communication, and she didn't want to have an abortion. And she's like, I already had one before, and I don't like abortion, and I feel a lot of regret from it. He was like, you can't make me be no father. That's not right. And you can't force no kid on me. Um, he, ended up having his offering her the money or whatever, and she took it, and then had his like lawyers deal with her. So some Prince Charming that was. Abolition Rising actually, Russell from Abolition is Rising actually went to his basketball game with a sign saying that he was a murderer, and they did take the sign down and stuff. But yeah, the text messages were not good. But it's still not good that she ultimately took that money, decided to do that. So obviously she felt bad, and she knew that she didn't like it and it was wrong, but she still, you know, made the decision to do what she did. So I think what would be best for women is to obviously not have this legal option on the table, because a lot of women wouldn't do it if it wasn't legal, especially if there was a punishment. So the law can be kind in that way. The law, if it was a deterrent from this terrible action, the law is also a tutor too. So yeah, just because you feel bad about it, I don't doubt that. I absolutely don't doubt that. I never say that. Um, not at all. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're not absolved of a crime just because you feel bad, especially if you still knowingly engage in it and then still advocate that other people engage in it. The saying that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare is not even that way anymore. But the fact that people would push a safe, legal, and rare, why rare if there's value in that human fetus? Like we understand that something bad is happening. That's why Joe Biden used to say that abortion was a tragedy, even though he would be like for it, like being legal and stuff. He just was still years back. He said he believed abortion was a tragedy, and now basically the talking point is you should allow it up to the well, have no restrictions. Basically, is what the Democrat Party basically pushes now. So I guess I don't have anything else to say about that particular comment, but other than just because you feel bad doesn't make it okay that you did a bad thing. But I will add this. I believe that there is redemption and forgiveness, and I want people to find that and to seek that. I do have an interview with my friend Ronquel Ball, who is she goes to my church, and I didn't know for the longest time that she had an abortion. She had one when she was in high school, and she had a second trimester abortion that was pretty horrifying. But I would recommend for people to go watch that interview, listen to that conversation, what led up to her ultimately deciding to have that abortion, for her personal life, and also sort of the dysfunctional sort of community society that we live in that basically fosters this environment of you sleep around, you get pregnant, go have an abortion, basically, like it's kind of no big deal. And to her, she said she wanted a blank slate. That was her reasoning. Again, she had a second trimester abortion, and it ended up being a very traumatic experience that she regrets doing what she did. But we talked a lot about forgiveness and redemption, and I think if there's any woman listening to this that has happened to have been through that experience, I pray and hope that you find that peace that she ultimately found, that many women end up finding. So have to go back in my archive a bit, but I hope I know that conversation blessed some people, and I hope that continues to do that for some folks. Anyway, before I let you go, I said I was going to play this video. This has nothing to do with anything, but my sister sent this to me last night, and it's in my head, and I want it to be in your head too, I guess, in case you ever hear me like singing about baby pigeons. It's an interesting little TikTok video. So here we go. Pigeons hide their children, pigeons hide their kids, till these birds are fully grown, till they're fully grown. Oh, if you see a baby pigeon, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter where, please be sure to let me know. Please let you know. Baby pigeons, where you at, where you at? Baby pigeons. One day I'll cross a baby pigeon on my path. Baby pigeon, baby pigeon, baby pigeon. So, if I ever randomly just say baby pigeons, you guys know why. You guys know why. I don't remember why we got on that conversation last night. And she referenced and she's like, "You've never seen the baby pigeons thing?" So she sent it to me and I shared it. I guess it had to be like a Samara from the Ring. Like I needed to share it or else. So you guys can share it too if you want. But yeah, the baby pigeon song was I guess I've never seen a baby pigeon, but interesting thoughts that people have. So weirdly dramatic, but I liked it. I liked it. She sang her heart out for the mystery of the baby pigeon. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. Um I didn't notice someone said your pronouns are fat bleep. Well, at least I guess there's something different other than my eyebrow. Not my eyebrows, my gap teeth. So, but not a news flash that I'm fat, guys. But if that's news to you, well, I guess you could not have eyes or have working eyes. So, just reading through the comments. And such inclusive language, by the way. Just be so kind, so diverse. I'm assuming the title triggered them to retaliate in such a way, but when folks demand that you, I don't know, respect their pronouns or whatever and stuff and retaliate in some kind of negative way like that, I like you guys are you know invalidating your worldview when you lash out like that. So you just I guess prove me right with your ad hominem attacks. So usually when people leave comments like that on TikTok or something, I'll just say ad hominem fallacy and let that be. But thanks for the views. I'm monetized. God bless, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.